For these Mike, good morning.
Good morning.
Good afternoon. What am I talking about? We normally do this in the morning, so
yeah.
Forgive me for messing that up this time.
I just followed your lead. I was going to go with it.
I love that you said good morning right back.
Yeah.
All right. So it's just us this month. We are titling this Riding the Wave. The idea is to frankly, shamelessly plug our friends Ryan Dietrich and Sono in the investment team. They published obviously their beginning of the year outlook, and then we just published the mid-year outlook. And they titled it Riding the Wave, and then the mid-year was still Riding the Wave. And essentially, to boil it down, they obviously think this bull market still has legs in it, and we're going to see continued equity outperformance. And we thought, what better theme for the RIA M&A market? And just today, we saw Berkshire publish their mid-year report following the Marshberry report, the DeVoe report. Echelon just did their second quarter lookbook. And the theme there universally is that RIA M&A is on fire, and it's going nowhere anytime soon. So we are going to talk about the first half of the year. Let's get into a few of the key themes that you and I have both identified. And then maybe we can prognosticate a little bit at the end of this about where we think the market's headed. Sound good?
I love it. I love it.
All right. Before we dive in, though, we do have a programming update. So we're going to first give a shout out to Tori, our fearless producer behind the scenes right now. But we're turning this thing into an actual real live grown-up podcast starting next month. We've been doing this live stream now for almost 2 years, and the number one most requested feature and or change to this is, please, for the love of God, turn this into a podcast so I can listen to this in the car or on my phone or somewhere other than watching it live on LinkedIn or on YouTube after the fact. So starting next month, Broderick and the Pod Pony folks are going to partner up with us. We're going to be recording in the studio and then start producing this and releasing it as an actual podcast on audio. Super exciting for us. We're going to rip the audio out of all our past episodes, be able to re-release them. We'll see how well some of our former mid-year outlooks or beginning of the year outlooks held up to the test of time, and we'll get them all out there. So we'll be on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere else that you might download podcasts. So exciting.
How long have you and I been talking about that, Michael? Since
probably since the first one.
Right, since episode 1. So it's exciting. Yeah. It's exciting. So starting in August.
Remember that very first one, we were sitting in the conference room upstairs, and we did it live. It was super awkward. Like, we're on couches, and we've upgraded the game a little bit, but now it's time to join the ranks of Facts vs. Feelings, our sister podcast that Ryan and Sono do. So excited for that.
Should our feelings be hurt, Michael, though, that people are saying we want to listen to you audio only and not see your face on
camera? I'd love it if you were not on camera.
I'd love it. Yeah. I love it if I didn't have to look at you while I listen to you. We want to just hear you. I don't know if we should be offended, but you know what? We've got to give the people what they want.
I think it's because most people watch these and if they are looking at their screen while they're watching it, they're wondering why you and I look like we're in a extradition site rather than in an office. So
exactly.
It's a function of us both standing and both being terrible interior decorators. So,
I hung my photos on the wrong side of my office. All of my beautiful family photos are over here that you guys can't see. I need someone to come in and help me with my design aesthetic.
All right. What do you say? You want to dig in?
I love it. Yeah. Let's jump right in.
Why don't we start first just on the volume? So if you look at quarter over quarter for the past 2 years now, really, we have set quarterly records consistently. There was a little bit of disagreement amongst some of the wonderful banking firms out there. DeVoe had identified a little bit of a cooling in the market in the second quarter. Most of the other firms had identified a ramp up, or at the very least, an increase of the same quarter, the second quarter in 2025. Anecdotally, it jives with what we're seeing, right? So we're now 16 deals into the year that we've announced. We've actually done 19. We haven't announced 3 of them. And we've got a few big closings coming up here in the next, let's call it less than 7 days. So the volume, I think, speaks loudly to everyone. M&A is here and it's here to stay. This has become a viable outlet to solve multiple problems, not just succession, but more importantly, more often, it's growth with a partner that can bring an additional level of resources and value prop so that great advisors can grow faster, more efficiently, and win better clients. Anything there that I'm leaving out or that we are wrong about? Because I don't think so.
I don't think so. What's fascinating to me, though, is, every quarter and every year you think, okay, can this really continue on this path? What's interesting is I think it's been a massive stress test on what firms are capable at that level of volume every year, and with it increasing. This is, back when M&A was just starting to ramp up in our industry, I think a lot of firms could dip their toe in and try. And I think what we're seeing now is to keep up with that volume and pace, the internal resources that firms have to have and that are dedicating to these types of transactions is exploding. I mean, even if you just look at Carson and all of the resources we keep adding to the teams to be able to, integrate that large a volume, though, that many deals in 1 quarter or 1 year, it's starting to become, I think, a little bit of a differentiator for the players who are able to handle that volume and the players who maybe just want to sporadically add M&A in every once in a while.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There was a great article. Forgive me where it was published, but they interviewed multiple corporate dev or RIA M&A heads about just how not that long ago, a lot of the RAs didn't actually have a dedicated M&A team. Yeah. Carson did. It was just very different. It looked more like a corporate finance team that was also effectuating transactions, both internally investing, but also for our individual partner offices, our 1099 offices that were buying another 1099. And you did a ton of those. Yeah. But now I think you're right. You look at sort of the haves and the have-nots. The firms that are doing M&A at scale have essentially an investment bank inside of their 4 walls. When you look at the 3 teams that make up what we do, so you're responsible for tuck-ins and obviously led the investing in our internal platform for a long time. My team oversees the outside investments that are new to Carson, folks bringing assets onto the platform. And then we have, without a doubt, in my opinion, the best integration and deal execution team in the business. And when you look at those 3 combined teams, we are 15 strong, probably somewhere in that realm. Not to mention, we have a fully fledged business development team and probably 40 people behind the scenes that help work on these transactions, like Kelsey and Alex and Lance and Nick Engelbart that come in and make sure these things actually get to the finish line. And that's a lot of investment and a lot of people.
Where that dawned on me, Michael, was we had our quarterly all company meeting. And so a large majority of Carson is in Omaha, Nebraska. So the great part about that is a lot of them are in the office when we have that. We have it downstairs. And we did a panel. And one of the questions I asked the group was, I said, raise your hand if you are involved with or touch an M&A transaction in any respect. If you're on any of our calls, if you're on any of the integration calls. I swore the whole company raised their hand. It felt like everyone did. And so you're right. We have this core of 15. And then you look at how many people this touches across the organization. And you think back to not that long ago when you had, a team of maybe three and one person was wearing 7 different hats. They were, going out and they had the relationship with the bankers. They were doing more of the business development, but then they were also executing on the back end when it came to M&A. They were doing the financial model. They were coming with the valuation thesis. They were doing it all. And now you started to see, even everyone that you just listed there, we have to divide and conquer a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's no shocker that transaction volume follows the investment you make in this as a core competency for the firm. So
yeah,
when you look at Echelon, Marshberry, and Berkshire, those 3 had Carson top of the leaderboard year to date for the most transactions. And obviously, it's no surprise that when you look at even the top 10, all of them have dedicated M&A teams. This is all I do, all you do all day, every day, is get new assets to Carson and negotiate and effectuate a deal.
Exactly. And I think from my perspective, I think the whole stress test is probably going to be a theme for me throughout this episode. I think in a lot of ways, we're all adapting to when you do that volume of deals, it means certain things for your org, and what are those things and what has to change. So I think for me, honestly, if I had to pick a trend, it's a stress test, and it's what firms are kind of ready to continue to do deals at that scale.
It's interesting just when you look back at M&A over the last, call it 4 or 5 years when this real frenzy started. The buyer list has shifted several times. I mean, we were a relatively new entrant, 4.5 years ago when I came over to Carson, and you were kind of running most of the investments that we were making into internal partners and some of the partner acquisitions. But if you looked then, there was a contingent of the really good big firms that have been doing it for a while. And there were less than probably 5 that were doing it at scale. Then you had this group that we belonged to. We were all around 20 billion at the time. And, call it 15 to 30 maybe for a bigger band. But there were some great firms in there. And some of them are still great firms doing this quite a bit. But if you look at that cohort, there are some of them that have gone from, 20 to 60 like we have, and some that have not. And the level and scale of the M&A that those firms are doing has sort of changed. And I've always thought one of our biggest secret weapons is the fact that we have so many ways to win with our 1099 model. Bert's talked about this on the show so many different times. We have the 1099 model. We've got the minority investment. We've got the wholly owned. We can tuck firms into a wholly owned or fully integrated office. There's a lot of ways that we can solve a problem for an advisor. And not every firm is able to do that, which is why I think you've seen firms sort of fall to the wayside. I think it's also telling, and obviously we don't get to see the balance sheets of any other firm, but one bad deal can really disrupt your rhythm and disrupt your appetite for doing M&A. And we've really hung our hats on, and I'm going to put this out there right now. We've never lost a deal that signed an LOI, and we've never had a firm fail to hit their retention payment. We take a lot of pride in being great integrators. That's why one of the reasons we're able to continue the pace of M&A that we're already doing.
Completely agree. And we're very transparent going into that LOI phase. I think that's critical too. To go in, we want that LOI we want the next day we should be able to execute documents if we had to, based off that LOI, right? We want that to be, the plan is not to come in with an LOI and then, we'll probably end up making quite a few changes leading to final deal docs. I think that's why we see a lot of success too. Going from, if we get to that LOI, we're 99% of the way there when it comes to definitive docs.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And a great banker, frankly, will get that LOI to a point where when you get to definitive docs, like that purchase agreement, there's a lot less to negotiate on because both parties are coming to the transaction with better assumptions and more aligned expectations.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, even when it's funny, an LOI is technically a non-binding document. But it's still good to spend time on that. You don't just send it out there willy-nilly. I also never thought I'd say the words willy-nilly in a podcast before, but you don't send it out with haste just to get it in front of them. You send it out because you intend to complete that transaction.
100%. Yes.
So we talked a little bit about how the buyer pool has shifted. It's interesting how the seller pool has shifted too. And I'm not going to take credit for this. I was talking with David Whalen from Merit at a conference not that long ago, and we kind of got talking on this topic of the middle is disappearing, and whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing. And I guess I'm somewhat agnostic there. There's so much choice out there. You've got 60 well-capitalized buyers, 25 of us that probably do this at scale all day, every day. Do you need 30? Do you need 70? I don't know. But the definition of who a buyer and a seller is has changed. And there's this sort of weird middle ground now that we're starting to see, that I'm starting to see external, where you're not big enough to buy, maybe not buy more than once. You can do one deal or two deals, but to go out and do 12, it's just out of the price range and out of your ability to integrate. But you're also not quite big enough to attract top tier private equity investment. And you also are big enough now to where your pool of buyers has probably shrunk. And that used to be maybe that $5 billion RA that was sort of used as a bellwether. Now I'd say it's more like a $15 billion RIA. And the stories that you see in wealthmanagement.com and CityWire and Investment News, they're spending more time covering sort of this theme of the middle firm or the mid-sized RIA firms that are now sort of at a crossroads, and they're deciding, do we stay in M&A and inorganic growth, or do we try and really blow out the doors on organic growth, or do we partner with a bigger firm like a Carson and try and supercharge this and not have to compete against them or try and play catch up on technology or whatever it might be? And we didn't even prep for this, but what are your thoughts on the middle, and is it good or bad for the industry that you're starting to see the definition shift?
I think that middle, to your point, probably just needs to clarify what is their end goal. Are they a middle-sized firm that has a succession need? Right? That's one thing, and that's going to lead you in one direction. Are you a middle-sized firm that is just honestly trying to make the decision of, we've got a long runway. Do we want to put our foot on the gas and do this and build it? And are we trying to build that enterprise value and do it on our own? Or, are we this size firm? And you know what? Like a partner right now is what makes the most sense, whether that be a minority partner or a full acquisition partner. And I think that's where you're going to find the firms like Carson, who were platform first, right? We were a platform first. We were an RIA. We came from coaching. We came from that platform, and we still have it, and we will always have it. And it's going to be an integral part of our business. Being able to have that, Carson can provide the solution to all three of those. So I think really for that middle-sized firm, just making the determination of what is the end goal, and what are we looking for. And I think too, what's interesting though, is that middle, be thinking too, why are we appealing to the large acquirers? And one thing to consider, and I'll talk about this more in a little bit, is if you're a team that has a lot of capacity with some amazing talent, if you have a lot of talent, you are valuable in maybe a different way than you're thinking. You have, if maybe what you struggle with is the business development side and the growth, but your team is fantastic. 100% of your clients will follow you wherever you go. Have you thought about, okay, our niche might be serving as succession for some of those $2 billion, $3 billion acquisitions that these firms are doing? We have the capacity and we have the talent. So is your selling point when you go into that process, we've got a deep bench and we are ready, and our clients love us. We provide top end service, the best of the best, and utilize us. You have a succession need in X city, and we are the team that can come in and solve that. I'm starting to see that maybe come into play a little more than it was a few years ago, before the industry really got hot and we saw all these deals occur.
Yeah. So that's actually that's a perfect segue. And I want to get to that geographic density and the idea of not just being in every market, but being deep in markets in just a second. But that shifting definition, it's remarkable. I was on the phone just yesterday with a great firm. There are 4 principals and 2 G2 talent that are on the cap table. They're growing everything that you would want in a firm. They're in the Southeast, just a terrific firm. And while we were having a conversation, they said something. They said, we deal with the mass affluent, and our average client size is 1 to 3 million. Just the definition around mass affluent has shifted, over the past 10 years. I remember in a prior life, we had firms that were focused on what they called the mass affluent, and that was the pre-retiree with $400,000 to $700,000 in a 401k that were retiring out of, a local municipality or a power and light company or something along those lines. It was all rollover assets. Now, the definition that we used to use for a millionaire next door is now sort of become the mass affluent in this country. So I think it's a good idea to always sort of be checking your definitions and making sure that we're using the most appropriate phrasing, because it means different things to different people.
Yes. Yes.
All right, let's get to geographic density. This is a topic you actually brought up. We were chit-chatting in your office about some of the trends that we were seeing, and I think it's a good one. It's definitely one we're talking about. And obviously, you've been tip of the spear in our efforts around trying to get deep into some of these markets. Whereas if you would ask me maybe 5 years ago, I'd said, hey, we need a Carson Wealth flagship in every major metro area. Next up is Boise and Charlotte. We need Philly. And you're the guy that's leading the charge to say, no. Like, yes, we do need that, but we're in Omaha. Let's get a lot more really good, great talent in Omaha. So you touch on that and what you're seeing?
Yeah. As you start to look at the deal announcements and you're reading on where firms are starting to do their acquisitions, what was intriguing to me is that, early on and still to this day, there is often a sense of, hey, we need to go plant our flag in X city. And there was kind of a race to how many hubs can we go create? Where can we do these acquisitions in cities that we don't have offices? Fast forward a few years, a lot of firms, Carson included, we've done a really good job of that, right? The map is really starting to fill in. So when you look at these announcements and where these deals are being done, oftentimes I'm seeing it being the second, third, fourth acquisition that a buyer is doing in a specific region or a specific city. And I kind of found that interesting. I started to think about the why on that and why is that occurring? And there's a few traits of thought. There's obviously a lot of reasons. In general, being more present in a locale is great for marketing and referrals and those pieces and brand recognition for the brand. But I do think, because Carson, we started to focus on this at the beginning of this year. One thing, and we talked about a little bit about succession. So M&A, it's funny when you think about it from the seller's perspective, can be a solve for a succession need. Right? Mm-hmm. I don't have someone in the office. I don't know what the legacy is for my firm. Selling to the large acquirer, it can provide a solution. However, the deal itself typically doesn't solve for it from the buyer side. There's still a need for what are we going to do? We've done all these acquisitions, which is fantastic. For the ones where the main advisor or group of advisors is nearing that retirement phase, what is our plan? What are we doing? And so there's a lot of different ways you can go about building out that talent. And one thing I love about Carson is we're doing it in a lot of different ways. Lisa Van Arsdale and what she's doing at Carson to build up that G2 leadership and stepping into the G1 and preparing them for that and how it's all going to work is fantastic. But I also think acquisition is going to be another way to do it. If you can go, and I kind of hinted at this earlier, a sales pitch for a selling firm may be, hey, I'm on the opposite side of the succession problem that you guys have. I'm on the opposite side. I've got a long runway. I am top tier talent when it comes to being an advisor. Clients are going to love me. If you have a need in a city, I can come in and fill that need. Yeah. I think we're starting to see that more and more. And what that's led to a little bit is, we talked about the middle going away. I see a little bit of a reinvigoration in the smaller side. Mm-hmm. Right. So you have the top end and then you have a little bit of the smaller firms. And I think there's a good argument that it's based off that succession. And the succession can go both ways. Some of those smaller firms may themselves be retiring and phasing out. And those are fantastic businesses to loop into an office that has a lot of really good talent already. But I do think it's starting to flip to the other side. I think those are starting to be, hey, our solution to our succession problem is going to include acquisitions of fantastic talent in cities where we already might have 1, 2, or 3 offices.
Yeah. And the firms that are most attractive for sale they recognize how important G2 talent is. They're starting to put them front and center. And I was just going back to that call I had yesterday. The two G2 owners are, one of them is related to one of the founders. The other one is not. He was a college hire. Between the two of them, you're looking at roughly 10% of the overall ownership of the firm, and they are on the management call selling their value along with the founders of the firm. That is a firm that has already thought ahead, and that is a firm that we will spend more on. And that's a firm that's gotten great representation too, because they're saying, make sure you put that talent front and center. It's interesting when you talk about the bottom end, not bottom end, that's not the right way to say it. The smaller end of the market being reinvigorated. I do think that is some of the hollowing out of the middle too, because on the opposite side, externally, we're seeing the market go up and we're seeing larger deals. So, when we, in the DeVoe report, they had talked about how most of these firms are targeting firms $1 billion and up, but they're seeing a ton of the transaction volume happening between 100 million and 500 million. And I actually think that's always been the case, or even maybe, again, going back to changing definitions, the bulk of the market was actually sub 100 million for a long, long time. It was the advisor buying another advisor. It wasn't a business selling a business. It was one advisor buying another advisor's book of business. But on the opposite end, the converse is true. And when you look at our pipeline right now, I mean, we have multiple firms, without saying names or locations, under a signed LOI that we're working towards close. And when you look at the size of those firms, 80% of them are $1 billion and up. And we're starting to see larger and more sophisticated firms come to market that are maybe they don't want to be a part of the middle. They want to go straight to, I'm going to sign up with a big wig and build this to an area where I can go out and win clients.
Yeah.
So again, I think the definition of, or maybe not the definition per se, but to your point, the motivations of some of these firms is changing as they approach that $1 billion or $1.5 billion mark.
And it goes to show too, if you want to be a successful buyer in this space, you do have to be multifaceted when it comes to the solutions you provide. Purely doing the acquisition and having them continue on as they are is one way. But again, going back to Carson's kind of recipe for success, and the reason we're able to do as many deals as we do is because the different solutions we have. Right? All the different options when it comes to how to integrate into Carson, teaming up with larger firms, becoming a large standalone office, becoming a really good hub in a location we don't have, partnering on the partnership channel, the 1099 independent channel of Carson, right? Knowing that you then have a good friend, partner, and potential buyer in the future when that time is right. And overall, having a platform that just in general wins, a platform where advisors can say, yes, my job is easier here. I'm having more fun. I'm working with experts. I feel more equipped to handle anything my clients bring to me. Like, it's the trifecta. You kind of have to have it all at this point to be able to accommodate that level of deal volume and the differing sizes, right? Whether it be small, medium, or large market.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. It's interesting too. We talked about the motivation. One of the themes that you and I have actually spent some time talking about this on this show is how much more sophisticated the average seller is now, and how much better educated they are on not just the process, but things like what we were just talking about, when you put your G2 front and center, or knowing to highlight organic growth, or they know their worth. They know what that practice is roughly valued. When's the last time you had a conversation with a prospective seller that said, yeah, my business is worth 1 time commissionable revenue, 2 times advisory revenue? Like,
yeah, not in a
5 years. Yeah. I mean,
it's a long time.
Everybody knows what EBITDA is. Everybody knows what adjusted EBITDA is, and an add back is, and how these firms are valued. And they're coming to the market better prepared, which I've always argued is a great thing. It makes for an easier negotiation if you're talking the same language. It's easier to align expectations if they're better educated. And you're starting to see these firms now approaching them for different reasons. So just the level of transactions, like, secrets out. All of these advisors know somebody that's done a deal with a firm like Carson, and they've had a conversation around structure and valuation and compensation and all these things that go into a really successful transaction.
Yeah. And I think the flip side is also true, Michael, where I haven't had any conversations with advisors saying the one times revenue. I'm experiencing less and less an advisor comes in with way too lofty of expectations on the high end. I
Right.
think representation and, reading up on all the deals. And I think the level of education talking about headline price that includes some growth, like those sort of structures are starting to become more prevalent in terms of everyone's kind of knowledge of them. So I
Yeah.
think we are finding, and it kind of goes back to the first point on the equilibrium here on valuations and where that at. I'm seeing less on the bottom, and I'm also seeing less. I think my firm's worth $100 million, and
Yeah.
maybe it's 20, right? We're having less and less of those types of conversations, and far more productive conversations.
I think you're
On
absolutely right.
focusing in on the actual stuff that goes into the math of it,
Mhm.
which is great. When I love, the more educated the seller, the better the process goes, just in general.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's, I think a lot of credit I give to Fidelity and the work that Laura Delaney McElroy did for a long
Yes.
time. She sort of highlighted some of the biggest reasons that deals fell apart was misalignment around perceived value from both the buyer and the seller. And there's some really great sell side advisory firms out there. I'll just use Marshberry and Alaris as two great examples where they've always talked about one of the first things that you need to do is sort of educate the potential seller on how the market is going to view their value, and you get them to sort of buy into that concept. It makes for, I think, a smoother process throughout. And I agree. I think we're starting to see more of a consolidation around what appropriate pricing is. That's another great theme, though. There was we participate in DeVos market research. Every quarter they send out a survey, and RIA M&A heads go in and fill out, where do you see volume going? Do you see valuations increasing, decreasing, staying the same? And it's amazing. I have put in increasing or stay the same every single time I've done that. How many people were so dead wrong about this? How many people thought valuations were going to top out at 8x? And how many people just did not anticipate the delta between a platform like Carson and a really good $2 billion firm, that delta shrinking in valuation? And I don't think valuations grow to the sky. Nothing does. We're getting to the point now where I think a really competitive offer for a top tier firm now looks an awful lot like a really competitive top tier firm for that same firm maybe a quarter ago. But I don't think valuations are going down anytime soon. Do you disagree? Agree? What do you think?
I agree. I think the only caveat I would probably put on that is I do think buyers are being a little more discerning in their look. So
Totally
for a
agree.
particular firm that maybe 2 years ago, when everyone was just in a buy frenzy, everything's great, all looks amazing, capital's plentiful, right? We're not having to deal with maybe the tension points of 3 years down the road of this. I do think maybe some of those firms, they maybe not a drop, but their multiple definitely has not increased. So if you were a mediocre firm then that maybe was getting an arbitrarily high multiple just because of the frenzy, that might come down. I think that would be the only caveat
I
I
think you're
put on
right.
that. But elite firms, to your point, if you are an elite firm and you check all the boxes when Michael and I are looking at evaluation criteria, I agree. I think they're staying the same. They're definitely not going down right now.
Yeah, I think you're dead right. I guess we could always throw geopolitical or market downturn. I mean, there
Yeah.
will be external factors that could impact valuations. I mean, we saw even in 2022 when interest rates spiked and obviously the market was much more volatile. We had a 1-year downturn. Valuations didn't really change. It just the buyer pool shifted, and there were firms that either because of their balance sheet or debt load or maybe just trying to integrate some of the deals they did the year before took a pause and then re-entered the market in 23 or second half of 23. So it wasn't necessarily that we saw the valuation slip in any way. They came up actually through that period, but we did see, and I think if you went through a process at that time, maybe instead of 8 great buyers that you wanted to spend time talking with, you might talk to 4 or 5. And
Yeah.
that could happen again. I mean, obviously, we're bullish on the market. It's not going to be a bull market forever. At some point, we will have a downturn, and I think that will impact things. And then I think we talked about this actually, if not on the last episode, it might have been 2 episodes ago. The first time someone goes public, and when a larger firm decides to ditch the private markets for the public markets, will the public markets value that firm the same? And if it holds up, great. If it doesn't, and we see them valued lower, then depending on the size and the quality of that firm, without mentioning any names, just let's say a really great firm goes public first and they experience a lower valuation, that will reverberate down through our entire industry. You will see firms up and down the chain sort of see a shrinking multiple. And if you are not a top tier firm and you are approaching the market, you might see significant compression of the valuation. But I think we're still a ways out from that. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon for a variety of reasons. There's still plenty of capital on the sidelines. None of these firms are so big to where they have to go public,
Right.
But it's not that far off. It's going to happen at some point.
No, but what's interesting, a trend I didn't see, and I only bring it up because actually recently, one of our acquisitions, we're doing reverse due diligence. And he said, Mike, really, I can boil my reverse due diligence down on Carson into kind of one question. And it's what happens to Carson in a 20% pullback of the market? And he's like, that'll tell me a lot. He's like, I can look at all the financials and do those sort of things, but what is your answer to me on, okay, in a 20% pullback, right? In all of the way and how Carson operates, what does that mean? If I am a seller and I am signing up for retention payments that are in the future, growth payments that are in the future, and by the way, probably some rollover equity, which has historically performed amazing.
Right.
What is that plan? And I was like, why are you the first advisor to ask me that? I was very intrigued. I was like, that's the best question I've ever received ever, especially right now and tying into Ryan and Sonu's outlook of when does this bull market run out of legs? Because, naturally we will have probably a little pullback at some point. I was surprised that it wasn't more of a trend of, okay, we've seen some turbulence this year. Buyer, what does this mean for my earnouts? What does this mean for the rollover equity? I thought we would maybe see a little more of that, but it's probably going to come in the back half of this year into next year. Have you?
So
been
let me
getting a lot
ask,
of those
how'd you answer
questions?
the question?
What?
How'd you answer the question?
I kind of answered it with the sense of, firms that are going to be able to weather that. I already kind of hit on it earlier. Your offering has to be far more robust than just acquisition. And so for us, and diversified, right?
Yeah.
We do look at all of our investments as a portfolio approach. We have a strong balance between our fully integrated and our independent channels. We've actually, the news just broke. We have fully focused on those two being two very distinct channels here at Carson. And so being able to have that, and also, by the way, we have historically been very cautious of our leverage ratio. That has been something we have been heavily focused on to plan for the eventual time that markets will have some sort of pullback. So, when you look at leverage ratio as compared to competitors, we look really low.
Yeah, we're less than half, most of them, in some cases, a quarter of where they sit.
Yeah. So you have to look at kind of the combination of all of those pieces. Are you diversified in the investments in general? Are you diversified in your revenue streams of how those come in? How have you managed that debt in the past and what have you been preparing for? And, there's another one, which is what has the success been on the acquisitions that you have been doing over the last 3 years?
Yeah.
We're getting far enough along, Michael, that we can start to generate a lot of good data on have these worked out and which types of firms have worked out the best. We all had investment theses at the beginning of this frenzy on why we should do this and why these high multiples are justified. We're now getting to the point where we can start to say, were we right? Right? Are we starting to pay off? And so I think my answer
I'd say second level, measure why that is.
Yes.
When you look at some of these firms that have significantly outperformed their growth expectations or ours, being able to put our business consulting team on site to figure out why and how were they able to do what they did it's tremendous.
And we've talked about too, you and I have always mentioned, an acquisition is oftentimes mainly about the people, the talent, and the processes and procedures. There are, when you are starting, as these move upstream, and you're talking about billion, $2 billion, $3 billion firms have been massively successful, that acquisition is starting to look more like, hey, we are mutually learning from each other on how to make this better. This is truly a merger of very talented individuals. And how can 1 + 1 = 3? Right?
Yeah.
How can we go down that path? It's not looking like the historical acquisitions, whereas the buyer has the sophisticated systems that the seller really wants access to, and do partnering is one of the ways they can get access to it. This is far more sophisticated at this point of a merger between those two firms.
And the great sellers out there are starting to fully realize the value that they provide to the buyer and the way that they're able to solve a problem. I mean, we have a firm that hopefully is going to be joining us in Omaha next week for a visit that I went and saw last week. Terrific firm in the Northeast, young talent, solid founders, a ton of growth. That is a firm that we walk into, and that is a platform that we can bolt on some of these tuck-ins that you've been doing. That's a firm that we can grow inorganically beyond just the things that we can do from an organic perspective. We have anybody in the region that's looking to transact, regardless of size. Obviously, it's got to be the right cultural fit. Economics have to make sense. But that is now the new flagship that we would be able to grow together. And obviously, both of us on both sides of the table would be significant holders of Carson equity. And you see that share price rise, and there's shared excitement around that. So it's fun. It's exciting. And it's not abating anytime soon. I think that's the core that we are trying to get across. Is there is a lot of legs left in this bull market, the RIA bull market, M&A bull market. Any other themes? Anything we talked about that we were planning on discussing today that we didn't already?
The final one I'll mention is just a continuing theme. Planning and tax is still winning. If you have expertise in planning or taxing, if you are doing that level of work with your client, those firms continue to win. Clients are now, they're starting to see it. We've talked about how investments at a certain point can become table stakes. And it's that planning and tax that individuals are coming to for. I think that trend is going to continue, especially as you look at the age of, if you look at your 40, 50-year-olds who are starting to become those high income earners, and they're starting to look for that advisor, they've been raised in a different world, right? Their world has been different, especially when it comes to investments. That has become a commodity to them. They're looking for that expertise. So I've seen it continue, but that next level of expertise that advisors are bringing, those firms are continuing to win.
Yeah, you're dead right. It's, maybe 5 years ago, so much of the value prop was tied up in how good is the technology, how good is the marketing team, how good is the investment platform. Those are still huge arrows in our quiver, tech in particular. But you now look at the bolt-on offerings that have become core to helping these advisors win, which is exactly what you just mentioned: advanced planning, case design, estate, trust administration, having all of that available. Ultra high net worth. Obviously, everything that Heather and Jamie Carroll at Carson have done to build that platform out. That's where you start seeing these firms, especially the 1 to 5 billion in AUM that are coming to see us. They really perk up, and that is more impactful to them because historically they may have lost those clients to a Goldman or a JP Morgan or whoever it might be. Now, we're going to help bring resources to bear that not only helps them win those clients, but retain them and service them, and turn that into a generational client rather than just a transactional client.
I have a firm right now in for an HOV. I need to run back there after we're done here. And we asked them, what's most important to you? So the beginning part of our day-to-day was Stephanie Knapp from Advisor Solutions, right? Support network. You had Lisa Van Arsdale on what are we doing with that next gen talent and developing them, and mentorship. Mentorship was a massive one. right? You have Grant Engelbart talking about the investments, Matt Lewis and Tom walking about insurance. Those are the things they want to talk about. Advanced planning, insurance, private client was a really big one. Investments, those pieces are, whereas, 9 years ago, at least from a Carson perspective, it was the technology for the advisor. I think the technology is still extremely important and it's going to fuel all of these departments. But when advisors are coming in, those are the pieces. It's all about what can I do for the client? How can I increase that? One advisor summed it up best for me. He goes, I don't want to wince when a client walks in and they say, can you help me with? I don't want to be like hanging on every word of what's coming after.
Right.
Because I want to be able to answer, yes, I've got the team. And if it's not me, I've got a bench full of amazing experts that I can pull from. That's what the advisors are wanting to answer that question with.
Amen.
Right?
Yeah, we had a bunch of young talent in earlier this week for our next gen advisory council, and then we had a bunch of owners in here doing a Carson Academy. And Scott Wood on our team posted on LinkedIn just yesterday or today, just the magic of Carson is the community of advisors we have and the willingness to make each other better and hold each other accountable and share ideas and be additive to the community. And man, he hit the nail on the head. Like I couldn't agree more. You see the talent in that room and the excitement at what they're building together and how far we've come. It's really, really neat to see and obviously energizing for all of us too.
Completely.
All right. Next month, we're going to be live in the studio. Do you think most of our listeners know that we do all of these live? That these are, I think only one of them have been recorded ahead of time. All of the rest have been live productions. Like we're going at it. There's no editing. You can't take out audio.
We got to be very careful about what we say.
We got to bleep half of the things you say.
Right.
It's all live. Right. But starting
those jump cuts are when Mike says something that compliance says no, we can't.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's like I feel like a word was missing there. There was a particular adjective I didn't hear. So starting next month, we're going to be in podcast format. We'll have the audio out. You can find us on all major podcasting platforms. Super excited for that. We're still going to record it live. We'll just be in the studio and then probably release it later. The other cool thing is you and I can start building up a bank of these. So we don't have any back catalog. We do these live, which means there are no unreleased episodes from the vault that we get to pull out. So we're going to keep
means between our travel schedules and everything, you and I have to find a date every single month that we are both available to record, right?
I know. And half the time it's like, oh my gosh. All right. Let's do this in between two really significant calls. So now we're going to be able to do these on the road. So if you and I are at Schwab Impact, as an example, and here's something really unique or something that maybe gets us thinking about things in a different way, we can record right there on the spot and add to it or use it later. So really excited about that. We're all grown up now.
I travel with 2 microphones and the XLR cables and everything. So we'll be fine, right? That's just normal gear in my backpack. So I think no matter where we are, we'll be able to record. We'll be able to whip it out and record it.
All right. Well, to everybody listening, thank you so much. We appreciate your support. This is a lot of fun for Mike and I to do. We enjoy doing this every month, as all kidding aside. So much of our credibility, I think, in the marketplace has come from just being around and being heard, whether it's you or I speaking at a conference or listening to these episodes. So appreciate the support. Keep the ideas coming. If we haven't gotten to it, we will record something and we'll make sure we tackle a topic that's important to the listeners. And we will see you in a month.